A very good morning to all the students of class 9th. And students, we were doing the chapter of civics, and the name of the chapter is What is Democracy and Why Democracy. So we had finished two parts of this chapter in which we had discussed about the important definitions of democracy, and on the basis of that democracy we were looking into some keywords, and on the basis of those keywords we were trying to find the important features of democratic form of government, so that easily any child, any student can differentiate between the non-democratic form of government and a true democratic form of government. In that case, we had started with the features, and we had finished three features. Today we will talk about the last feature, important feature of democracy, which is given in your NCERT book. And this will start with the term rule of law and respect for rights. Here we will talk about that why it is important that there should be limitations on the power of the government, what government can do and what government can impose on its citizens, and the rights of the citizens should be protected by an independent body, that is judiciary. So we will talk about all that in a democracy, if we have given all the power, centralized power to the government, that government can do anything, that is not going to be the correct method of democracy. So in a democratic form of government, there should be limitations on the government functions also. So we are going to discuss this with the help of the example of Zimbabwe. Like in the previous section, we had talked about the second feature of our democracy while taking the example of China, and we are taking the example of Mexico, to understand that our democracy must be based on the free and fair elections, where those currently in power must have a fair chance of losing. Okay, so today we'll talk about this fourth feature. Okay, so let's take it from here. Zimbabwe attained independence from white minority in 1980s. So Zimbabwe got independence in 1980s from the white minority. Since it means they were the colony of white people. Since then, the country has been ruled by ZANU PF. So this is the name of the political party which is the most dominant party, and in the freedom struggle, this political party was leading the freedom struggle from the front. Its leader Robert Mugabe. So the name of this party, or the leader of this party, ZANU PF, Robert Mugabe, the ruler, ruled the country since independence. So after the independence, this was the person, Robert Mugabe, who was ruling this country, Zimbabwe. Although elections were held, he was very popular, and elections were held regularly and always won by ZANU PF. Okay, so elections were held as we have in the democratic form of government, but as I told you, in any country, if they are having the contesting the election, it does not mean it is a democratic form of government. For that we have seen many features. What are the required features? Are all the centralized powers or all the final decision power making powers are with the people who are being elected by the citizens of a country? So we have to look into all this. So here elections were held, but every time this party got the majority. So as President Mugabe, he was the most popular leader, we said, of the winning party. So he was the president. He was very popular, but also used unfair practices in the elections. So in case he should not be removed from the power, and nobody wants that they should be removed from the power. So during the elections, he used to practice the malpractices or the unfair means or the frauds to win the elections. Over the years, his government changed the constitution several times to increase the powers of the president. Many times they made amendments to the constitution so that they can make and give more power to the president according to the constitution, so that no one can question him, so that he is not accountable to the people or to the parliament, okay, to the judiciary, to the executive. So he was trying to be the supreme power, and that is why he has amended the constitution several times so that he could increase the power of the president, that is himself, and make him less accountable. He did not want it to be accountable, that anyone would ask questions to him. Opposition party workers were harassed and their meetings disrupted. So we can see what were the circumstances or the environment. If we talk about Zimbabwe here, the ruling party president was trying to become more powerful, where he was amending the constitution, and on the other hand he was harassing the opposition parties. Any party he was trying to question the president, whom the president thought that they can challenge them in the elections. Those party workers were harassed and their meetings were disrupted many times. Okay. Public protests and demonstrations against the government were declared illegal. No one was allowed to do any type of public protest against the government or against this president Demonstrations were not allowed anyone. It was declared that anyone protesting against the government or against the president, that should be declared as illegal. Okay, and they can be put into jail also because it is illegal. There was a law that limited the right to criticize the president. Now they, as I said, they were just amending and making changes in the constitution so that the president was not accountable to anyone. So here the laws that limited the rights of the criticize the president. No person has the right to criticize the president. Everybody knew that president was using unfair means and in a form, and he was not working according to a democratic form of government. People were not given the right to freedom, right to speak, right to expression. Okay, even the opposition parties were not given the open freedom environment so that they can contest election. But still even the television radios were controlled by the government. It means there was a censorship. Whatever had to be printed, or we would say telecasted on the televisions or radios, or even written down in the newspaper, everything used to be checked by the government or the president first, then they used to get the permission. It means television and radio were controlled by the government and gave only the ruling party's version. Okay, there were independent newspapers also, but apart than the government newspapers and televisions, there were private channels and private newspapers also. But government harassed those journalists who went against them, like they were harassing the opposition parties which were trying to oppose them, or whom they thought that they can be a tough challenge for them in the elections. So they used to harass them. In the same way, any private channels or any private newspaper which was against the government, they used to harass them, especially the journalists who went against the president or the government, that is ZANU PF. The government ignored some court judgments. Even the government was ignoring the judgments of the court that went against them. If there was any judgment given against the ruling government, that was ignored by the government or by the president. And pressurized, here the judges were pressurized. He was forced out of office. If he did not listen, he did not give the decision in the favor of the government, even he was pressurized and he was forcefully removed from his office in 2017. So they have given the example of 2017. This case has been there by 2017, recently we can say. So by understanding all these circumstances of Zimbabwe, you can easily make out this place is not at all a democratic form of government. Although they are having elections, but those elections are not the free and fair elections. Here the environment is not good for the people, where they have the freedom, they have the equality of opportunities, they do not have the right to protest or say anything against the government. Anyone going against the government, they are being harassed in somehow. So the example of Zimbabwe shows that popular approval of the ruler is necessary in a democracy, but it is not sufficient. Popular government can be undemocratic. It means a popular government, like in Zimbabwe, that government was very popular, but it can be undemocratic, because once we get the power, we can misuse the powers. In the case of this, like Robert Mugabe, he was an important and a popular leader of Zimbabwe during the freedom struggle, but once he took over as the president, he started misusing his powers by amending the constitution several times. So the popular governments can be undemocratic, popular leaders can be autocratic. He was very popular, but he became autocratic. All the powers were in his hand. He wanted everything to go according to him. If we wish to assess a democracy, it is important, but if we want that there should be a true democracy in our country, true democratic form of government, it is important to look at the elections. Elections play an important role, but it is equally important to look before and after the elections. Elections are important, very important, that how elections are held in a country. That gives us the glimpse of a status of a country, whether it is a democratic or a non-democratic form of a government. But before and after the election, what is the circumstances of a particular state, that also gives us a rough idea of a country. So there should be a sufficient room for normal political activities. So in every country there should be a proper room. It means a freedom should be there for the political activity. It means where people were not allowed to protest, even to raise their voice, to share their ideas. In that country we cannot say there is a democracy. Even the political opposition parties were not given the freedom, okay, in the period before elections. This requires that the state should respect some basic rights of the citizens. Also, people were not given the right to even protest. Okay, they were not. It was not like they got the freedom Even the newspaper and televisions were controlled by the government. So all these activities prove that it is not only government or it is not only elections. Other than that, political life, social, economic life of the people is also very much reserved, and I would say there are a lot of barriers put by the government. So we cannot say it is a democratic form of government. They should be free to think. Now they are saying in a democratic form of government, people should be free to think, to have opinions, to express their these in public, to form associations, to protest and take other political actions. So these are some of the important rights which every citizen should have access to. Everyone should be equal in the eyes of law. Here every person should be equal in the eyes of the law. If he's a president, if this person Robert Mugabe, he was the president and the leading party of JANU-PF, it doesn't mean that the laws will be different for him, and if there is a common man, the laws will be different for him. So in a democratic country, the important feature is that everyone should be equal in the eyes of the laws. If I commit some crime, I have been given a harsh punishment. But if the president of the country is also committing the same offense, he should be also getting the same punishment as I got. So this is that every person should be equal in the eyes of laws. These rights must be protected, and these rights which are given by the laws, it should be protected by an independent judiciary. Judiciary is very important here, that are Supreme Courts and High Courts. So judiciary whose orders are obeyed by everyone, because it is judiciary, that is an independent body. Their orders are obeyed by everyone in a democratic form of government. We shall read more about this in chapter 6. We'll read about judiciary separately. Okay. Similarly, there are some conditions that apply to the way of government it runs after the elections. A democratic government cannot do whatever it likes. Here they are saying, suppose we held the election and a party has got the majority and they have formed the government at the center. But it does not mean that government has been elected and they have all the powers, so they can do anything they want. Simply because they have won an election. If they have won the election, people have elected their representative, it does not mean that government will use its power or misuse its power in this way. It has to respect some basic rules. So there should be some basic rules for the government also. In particular, it has to respect some guarantees of the minorities. Every major decision has to go through, like if there are any major decisions which are for the people, economic, political, social decisions, those should go through a proper procedure like in India we have a parliament. Here it is discussed in the Lok Sabha, then it is passed to the Rajya Sabha, then signed by president, then it is implemented by the executives. So in the same way, every major decision has to go through a series of consultations. Every office bearer has certain rights. Everyone has certain rights and also responsibilities. It is not only power. Along with powers, we have a lot of responsibilities also assigned by the constitution. So it is constitution which is giving the rights also and responsibilities also by the law. Each of these accountable not only to the people but also to other. Like we talk about the government at the center, it is exercising a lot of powers, but along with it, it is also having a lot of responsibilities. If it does not work properly, if it does not follow its responsibilities, they can be questioned by the executives or they can be questioned by the judiciary, okay, according to the constitution. So there should be check and balance. The power should be distributed. Each of these accountable not to the people but also to the independent officials. We can read more. We'll read more about this in the chapter 5 when we'll study about judiciary. So both these aspects give us the fourth and the final features. So these aspects give us the fourth and the final feature of democracy. What is the fourth feature? A democratic government rules within limits. So our democratic government should rule and function within limits. It means there should be limitations on the power of the government, and those limitations are given by the constitution. Like in case of India, we have got fundamental rights. Like every citizen has fundamental rights, 6 fundamental rights. As those fundamental rights puts some limitations on the power of the government. Government cannot violate our fundamental rights, prohibit our fundamental rights, because those are set by the constitutional laws and citizens' rights. So with this we come to the end of the features. Let's talk about now, take the summary of definitions. The next topic here is summary of definition, where we will discuss that what are the points we have discussed in all these 4 features. So now you saw that how we had understood a simple definition, that is democracy is a form of government in which the rulers are elected by the people. But just understanding this simple definition is not enough, because we have to study the details of democracy to understand the features. So talking of the summary definition, let us sum up the discussion so far. We started with a simple definition that democracy is a form of government in which the rulers are elected by the people. So we'll sum it. We found that this definition was not adequate, because this definition is not adequate, not enough to describe the true democracy. Although this is a definition, but through this definition we cannot say that which country is a democratic form of government and which country is a non-democratic form of government. For understanding that, we had to study various features, and those 4 features we have studied by understanding these terms within the definition: form of governments, rulers, elected, and people. By understanding these 4 important key terms of the chapter, we have understood the features of democracy. So we found that this definition was not adequate unless we explained some of the key words used in it. So in these 4 features, we have talked in detail about these important key features, keywords also. Through a series of examples, we have worked out 4 features. So by taking various examples of various countries, we talked about China, we talked about Mexico, we talked about Zimbabwe, Pakistan. So these were the countries. By taking the examples of these countries, we have to try out to find the features of a democratic form of government. So worked out the features of democracy as a form of government. Accordingly, democracy is a form of government in which. So now finally, to summarize and to conclude, we can say that a democratic form of government is in which, if you see a government in which you find these characteristics, it means that is a democratic form of a government in that country. So the first is, rulers elected by the people take all major decisions. Whoever are elected by us, they are the only people who are taking the major final decisions. It means that is the democratic country. First feature, that is. Second, elections offer a choice and fair opportunity to the people to change the current rulers. Okay, through elections we know there is a tenure of 5 years. Okay, and after every 5 years we can change our rulers, because we will not give vote to them. So ruling party has always a chance of losing. Okay. Then this choice and opportunity is available to all the people on an equal basis. It means all the people are equal in front of the eyes of law. There is no differentiation or no discrimination on the basis of caste, color, language. Everyone is equal. Whoever will be a citizen of a particular country in a democratic form of government, they all will be treated equally by the law, irrespective of their caste, color, even the status. The exercise of this choice leads to the government limits by the rules of the constitution. It means there should be some limits on the power of the governments also, which are put by the constitution to protect the rights of the citizen. As I told you, in the case of India, to put some limitations on the powers of the government, to put some restrictions and constraints. Indian constitution has a provision in place where it guarantees fundamental rights to its citizens, and those fundamental rights cannot be violated or prohibited by the government as well. Okay, and it is all being guaranteed by the constitution. So these are some of the important features which you need to understand, so that we can differentiate which country is a democratic form of government, which is non-democratic form of government. As in the chapter I had already told you, every country around the world these days is trying to prove, or they are trying to show as they are a democratic form of government. So it becomes important to understand the true democratic or the true democracy, the meaning of true democracy. So by understanding these 4 features, I hope you have understood. And if I tell you and give you some characteristics of various countries around the world following different methods of elections, different methods during the election period, so you will be able to differentiate them easily now on the basis of this discussion. Okay. So in the next chapter or in the next video, we will be talking about why democracy. The name of the chapter, I hope you remember. What is democracy? So we have tried to understand what is democracy by reading out a simple definition and then understanding the meaning of the key features, words which has been used in it. And through those keywords, we have understood 4 important features of democracy. So with that we have completed first part of the chapter, that is what is democracy. Now the second question is why democracy, why there is so much of increasing popularity if we talk about democracy. So in this topic we will be talking about why democracy. Okay, so with the help of the examples we'll try to understand this. There is some story also given to you for understanding the better concept of democracy. So we'll take that in the next class. Till then, thank you, take care.